Go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's HR training with Dana Dowdle. I know many of you or all of you have sat in the trainings with her before. Employee recognition in the post-pandemic workplace. If you have any technical difficulties, as always, please send me a chat or an email if you're having issues. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand. Dana, I don't know if you want to take them as we go. I mean, you usually pause anyway, I think, in your presentation to say if there's any questions. Yeah. So I'll just turn it over to Dana. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you and good morning. It's great to see everyone again, and hopefully you all are surviving and looking forward to getting out of the seasonal depression season and into some springtime. So the training today is going to cover a little bit of a softer topic. The COVID and the pandemic has resulted in kind of compliance overload. I know I'm feeling it. I know, a lot of my clients are feeling it. And so I wanted to focus on how does recognition look different in a post-pandemic workplace? And why is it even more important now that we continue to be really intentional about how we recognize our employees? So I know you all have been through a training, but that is me. I am the owner of Boss Consulting. I have been doing this for about 3.5 years, but I've been in human resources for about 10 years now, which makes me feel incredibly old. And then, as always, there's a disclaimer. None of this is legal advice. Of course, if you run into any situations that cause your kind of HR to itch a little bit, you certainly want to contact legal counsel and get some legal advice. But this is a softer subject, so I don't imagine this would result in anything that would need legal counsel. But anyways, so I want to just talk about the science of recognition. If you've worked in human resources for many years, or if you've gotten a degree in human resources, we know about the idea of intrinsic and extrinsic rewards and recognition, and how important it is for the feel-good component of working is for our employees. And so, when you have a culture that's focused on recognition or appreciation, it can have a direct positive link to your workplace outcomes or your business outcomes, which are really important. I teach at Eastern Connecticut State University, and we are constantly talking about strategic alignment. So when you have a recognition program or a training program or a recruiting program that aligns with your overall company mission, vision, and values, that's where the magic can happen. When everything is in alignment, that's where these great, work outcomes can happen, and these fantastic employee experiences can happen. So some of the positive business results that we can see from having a really good recognition and appreciation program and really including it in your culture. Obviously, you can see increased productivity and efficiency amongst your workforce, higher levels of engagement. Employees really need to feel appreciated for the work that they're doing. And when they feel appreciated, then they have a really high sense of value from their employer. So they're much more engaged in the workplace. That results in heightened job satisfaction. And with that comes higher retention levels, lower turnover, which makes your job in human resources easier when you're not having to fill, open positions at a high rate. And I think what's really important now is it lowers the rate of burnout. Particularly with COVID and employees who are essential workers, they are experiencing a high level of stress, a high level of burnout. And it's not just related to work, it's their personal life as well. Maybe they are trying to continue to teach remotely and be a teacher and an employee. And so it's very easy for them to feel burned out or stressed. And so when you can make their experience at work that much better, it can lower the rate of burnout. And then also it will help lower absenteeism as well. So I keep hearing people say like, this is the new normal, COVID, post COVID is the new normal. And, it may be when we look at the pandemic experience, employers went through some pretty intense periods to respond to what was going on in the workplace. So we had the period of having to respond kind of rapidly. So how did the organization respond to the present situation and kind of manage continuity within the workplace? And I'm willing to guess and bet that not a lot of you were focusing on recognition at this point. When you had to figure out, how do we get PPE? How do we manage the FFCRA? It wasn't about how do we continue to show appreciation for our staff. It was, how do we make it through this period and how do we survive? So that was a big period of time for employers and a big kind of energy suck for employers. And then we moved into the recovery phase where we're figuring out how to take what it is that we're having to do now and emerge as a stronger employer, a stronger workforce, a stronger company. And then now we're in the period where we can kind of thrive. Things are settling a bit, and it sort of feels like there's this less of a sense of urgency related to COVID, and we can start to plan and update our policies and update our procedures and programs for what it is for our new workplace. So I wanted to ask you guys, and this is going to be something new that we're doing in this training. So if you go to pollev, pollev.com/Dana D 000, you can anonymously answer this question. What's one word that you would use to describe your company's current recognition program? And I think Kelly put it in the chat.
Yep. So it's right there in the chat as well. You can copy and paste it in. And yeah.
So I'll give you guys a minute or two to think about what's one word that you would use to describe your current recognition program, like as it is today. You can also text. So you can text Dana D 000 to 22333. It's completely anonymous. It shouldn't ask you for any identifying information. So if you want to type that your recognition program is a hot mess, no one's going to know it's you.
Yeah, when I just did it, it did say first name, last name, but you can just skip that.
Yep, you can just.
So yeah.
So hopefully they should start to. Non-existent. Yeah, non-existent, on the fly. I'm sure that resonates with the group.
Yeah, and it can, like Dana said, I mean, it can be anything. So whatever it is now, I mean, there's no answer is a wrong answer. We want participation from you guys to get a sense. So, and if it's already been said, because that's how it is in your place already, that's fine too, but don't be shy.
We'll give it another, 10 seconds or so to see if there's any more contributions. Jay says terrific. Okay. Yeah, so I think these two terms, on the fly and non-existent, it's a common experience in the workplace. We dormant, That's another one. Absolutely. We do not have one. Oh, now they're all coming in. Okay, good. Terrific. Awesome. Yeah, most employers, they get caught up with the other things that they have to do. And so recognition kind of falls by the wayside. And I hear a lot of my clients and they'll say, "Oh, well, I thank my staff all the time. I say thank you all the time." That's great, but that's not enough. And that's also not enough, um, particularly after COVID. So I think it's important to recognize, what are your employees craving right now? We had about a year of this wacky pandemic. We had a lot of employees working remotely. We can't kind of interact in the same way that we used to in the workplace. So, what are your employees craving? Um, so Absent, there is none. Yeah, perfect. All right, we're gonna go to the next slide. So your employees are craving connection and community. And I don't think this is anything new, but if we look at the pre-COVID workplace, a lot of these forms of connection and a sense of community came very naturally in the work that we did. So it came from your customers or clients. It came from being able to see your coworkers, to hear them speak, to be in close proximity to them, to hug, to shake hands. And so people have always craved connection and always craved a sense of community from their workplace. It just is much harder to do that now because we're still social distancing, or we're still wearing masks, or we have half of our team remote and half of them in person. And we really are in a world right now that desperately needs kindness, recognition, and empathy. And so that's what your employees need, not just the world. Your employees need kindness, recognition, and empathy. So, how do we get there? So, I'm going to give you some examples, but I also think it's important to understand what your workforce needs. So, if you're not sure what they need, survey them. It take a pulse check with them. Get a sense of maybe how do they feel about how your company responded to the pandemic? Is there anything that they wish they would have received or been informed of during the pandemic? And is there anything that they need now? How do they like to be recognized? What type of recognition are they looking for? And again, that doesn't have to be expensive. So I think sometimes when we think about surveys, we think about, these big consulting firms that come in and will survey your employees, and it's confidential and it's anonymous, and they have, 300 meetings with your employees and charge you $1 bajillion. It doesn't have to be complicated. Use something simple: Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, Poll Everywhere, and get feedback from your workforce about specifically what are they craving, and then take action on it. Add specific and pointed questions so that you can gain general and targeted feedback, and then use that information to develop and improve upon your new program. So early on in the pandemic, McKinsey, which is one of those large surveying consulting firms, they did a survey where they surveyed about 800 US employees on a wide range of topics related to their experience as an employee when the pandemic hit. And one of the common themes is trust. And there was some feedback about, I don't trust my employer. I don't trust that they're looking out for my best interest. I'm not getting the information that I need. And then on the flip side, it was, my employer has done a really good job communicating what's been going on. My employer has done a really good job of keeping us in the loop and making sure that we have what we need to continue to do our jobs. And so from this study, McKinsey came up with 4 key actions that employers can take kind of as they continue on in this quote unquote new normal. So one of the first actions is to make the recognition credible. And that looks like giving employees airtime through pulse surveys, listening tours, story sharing. Have your leaders speak really transparently about what your employees are experiencing, and then use that data to analyze information and communicate that information to employees. The next action would be to make it feasible. So make it, instead of waiting for transformative solutions, push responsibility to the edges to accelerate change. So make it happen. So if you decide to survey your employees, make it happen. Push action out so that you can accelerate that change. You also want to make it sustainable. So, this may be our new normal for the next year, 2 years, where we're still having to socially distance. We're figuring out the vaccine thing. So, develop a program that can be sustainable, that it can be fluid and flexible and can adapt to whatever's going on in the workplace. And then most importantly, make it personal. So, we'll talk towards the end about the idea of thanking your employees, um, and how you can take that thank you to the next level. But it's really important that the way that we are showing recognition and appreciation to our employees is personal. Use behavioral science to inform your decisions and to inform your programs. Make it personal and unique to your workplace and to your employees. So let's talk about technology. So it's really interesting. As I was working on this presentation, I was thinking about how, I think prior to the pandemic, we used to think about technology as kind of a barrier to connection. I don't have kids of my own, but I have lots of nieces and nephews, and my friends will say, "Oh, is it bad? I put on Mickey's Clubhouse, and I just let my kids sit in front of it for a couple hours." And they're using technology to keep their kid distracted. And so we would also often think about it as, when we're using our cell phones or we're behind our computers all day, we're not connecting. We weren't engaging with our coworkers. But now we can look at technology as a tool that can be used to connect and unite our workforce. So you can absolutely lose the personal touch when doing things virtually, or we can take kind of the alternate viewpoint and we can use technology to bring a more personal touch to your workplace and to your workplace culture. And I think this is one of the really good ways to make or allow your employees to feel engaged, because what technology can do is bring visibility to those positions within leadership that maybe didn't have much visibility. So for example, let's say you have an executive director that it's a little bit kind of out of touch with the workplace. They're constantly working on bigger operational things, and they're not necessarily connecting with employees on an individual basis. You can hold a town hall. You can use technology and have your executive director give kind of an update on what's happening within your organization. And so that's one of the ways that you can use more technology to bring a more personal touch to your workplace culture. And, it kind of flips the script around technology causes us to lose the personal touch. And instead, we can use it to really bring more personal touches to our culture. So some technology do's and don'ts. Obviously, we want to ensure that all employees can participate in whatever recognition programs that we have fairly and equitably. We also want to make sure we maintain a positive attitude about the benefits of technology. I'm in a BNI chapter, Business Networking International. And there's always a lot of chatter around how we have to do virtual meetings and how we hate virtual meetings. And it just sours the association of technology. So particularly in your roles as human resources and as leaders, it's really important that we maintain a positive association and a positive attitude about the benefits of technology. And then, of course, probably the biggest challenge is to train to increase the comfort level around the use of technology. That's going to help you ensure that all your employees can receive that information, receive that recognition, participate in recognition fair and equitably, but you may have to train someone on how to use a new system. And you should constantly be doing that. That helps build engagement as well. So some don'ts or some kind of caution points. I was talking to someone about this recently, and they brought up a really good point that when you have a hybrid meeting, where you have some employees that are in the room and some employees that are virtual, that there tends to be an emphasis on paying too much attention to the people that are online and catering to those that are online to try to make them feel included and feel part of the room. But then you're ignoring the people that are in person. So you want to, I caution you that if you're using technology in a way that you have, a virtual, partially virtual meeting and half, partially in person, that you're not paying too much attention to the people online and not enough attention to the people in the room. And then I think most importantly is don't overcomplicate it. It does not have to be, a complicated program or platform or system. You can use the simple tools that we have, Zoom, Google Suite, all of those things to your benefit when you're trying to recognize employees. There are some platforms that you may want to consider that focus specifically on employee recognition and rewards. So Bonusly, Reward Gateway, Kazoo, Bucket List, these are all kind of digital ways that you can engage your workforce, provide an outlet for some peer-to-peer recognition, and then it becomes in a public forum. But I also think you can keep it simple. So KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Use LinkedIn. You can use LinkedIn to go on and give your employee a public shout out or write them, a review, or, you can publicly use a free platform to recognize your employees. And so it doesn't have to be an expensive platform that you have to roll out and you have to train people on. You can keep it really, really simple. I want to just pause and see if there's any questions that have come up.
Okay, I don't see any in the chat, but if anyone has any, you can unmute yourself right now or raise your hand, or we can just keep going.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi. Can you just give us like a quick synopsis of what some of these platforms do?
Yeah. So a lot of them, and they're each a little bit different, but a lot of them allow employees and managers to personally thank your coworkers or your team in a public way. So it kind of creates a digital, I don't know if any of you have like a bulletin board in your workplace where you'll put shout outs to employees up, but it creates a digital bulletin board essentially that you can send someone, nudges of appreciation, and it becomes in a public forum so that everyone can see it. But they're all a little different. That was a good question. All right, any other questions?
No, I don't see any right now.
Okay, perfect. So again, we don't have to complicate it. We can take small actions in what we're doing. And we live in a world right now that can sometimes feel like it's changing by the minute. You have a day that feels like a week or a month. So it's really important that we don't wait too long for those big recognition moments. So monthly or quarterly or annual programs where you recognize employees for longevity, or major events that happen on an annual basis, those are great, and those can absolutely be part of your program. But we don't want to forget the small wins that our employees have on a regular basis. So you want to make sure that you're designing a recognition program for kind of in the moment achievements, and to recognize those small wins that are helping your people and the business survive in what we are currently experiencing. So I'll give you an example. I used to work up at Twin River Casino up in Lincoln, Rhode Island. It's my very first HR job. And we rolled out a customer service training program, and it was called Give the Guest a Pickle. So it was designed by this gentleman who owned a diner, and they decided to cut costs, and by cutting costs, they stopped giving pickles with their sandwiches. And so they realized very quickly that that's not what their customer wanted. And so they realized that, a simple gesture like giving the guest a pickle with their sandwich made such a big difference from the guest and the service experience. So they designed this entire customer service program around the philosophy of like those simple things that we sometimes take for granted, like a pickle on the side of our sandwich, really make all the difference from a guest or service experience or service perspective. So we designed a recognition program called Pickle Cards. And it was on the spot recognition. So there are these little green cards that have a pickle on it, and our managers had them. And when they caught an employee doing something good that was in line with our customer service program, they gave them a pickle card, and then they could then redeem that in human resources for a gift card. So it was these small little actions that, cumulatively add up to be a really good service experience, or add up to be so closely aligned with our culture that that's what we want. And so it allowed our managers to really recognize those small wins and those small moments. And then employees were able to be recognized for them and get a gift card. So I also have a client where we have a very similar program. We call it a Ripple. It's the Ripple Reward. And the philosophy behind that is that, the ripple, it just kind of compounds on itself. And so one really good small action, when we recognize it, it compounds on itself. So we do the same thing. If we have an employee that has a really good patient experience or client experience, we give them the Ripple Award, and then they're able to get a gift card. So these small wins are really important, and they help to reinforce what is important to you as a workplace. So make sure that however you design it, and it's actually a really good place to start these small programs that don't really require a lot of bandwidth, but can very easily gain a lot of momentum. So recognizing small wins, you can also engage your employees by asking them what they're most proud of recently. You may think what you want to recognize your employees for is what makes them most proud, but when you actually talk to them and ask them what is really kind of filling their cup, that's also going to help you design a program that's going to meet a lot of your employees' needs. So I'm all about simplicity these days because HR seems to be very complicated. But employees love swag. So there's some great ways that employers can introduce kind of swag and appreciation that don't necessarily cost a lot of money. I'm a big fan of the website Vaudeville. So they have some like really fun and quirky types of appreciation gifts and thank you gifts. I have another client where we did branded pullovers for our employees, and the employees loved them so much that we just created a Land's End company storefront that doesn't cost you anything as an employer, and it allows you to give your employees a way to show their company pride. And you could even incorporate that into some type of recognition program. Maybe you give credit, gift cards or credits towards Land's End items, so your employees can go on and buy some branded items. I know Chelsea Groton Bank, their mascot is the squirrel with the acorn. That's kind of like their whole branding. And so they have a recognition program built entirely around kind of that acorn philosophy. So when employees are doing something really great, they earn acorns, and then they can use those acorns to buy certain branded items on their company storefront as well. So you can really have fun with it. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be crazy and, multi-levels and multiple people involved. Keep it so simple. And then obviously thank you notes or thank you cards. Those are a really fantastic way to show your appreciation and your recognition for your employees. And I think why they are so good and such a good tool to use is because it takes time, right? It takes time to sit down and write a thank you card and to specifically, highlight what you're appreciative of them for. So, when you show your employees that you're putting the time into the appreciation, that gets reciprocated, and that can really be appreciated. So I have a client, it's a food and beverage operation, and I'm constantly in a battle with the owner because I talk a lot about appreciation with him. And he says, well, I say thank you all the time. I leave here, I say thank you. I come in, I say thank you. I thank them for doing their job. I thank them for showing up today. And I always say to him, I'm like, that's all good, great, that's fantastic. But I want him to go beyond the thank you. I want him to specifically tell his employees what he thanks them for. What did they do today that he really appreciated? And so there's a good analogy. It's called the sale analogy. So focus on the situation. So when you're thanking someone, thank them for, or think about what was the situation that they were facing when they did what they did. So maybe they were dealing with a challenging customer or a broken process, or maybe even like a missing team member, an employee that called out and they were doing 2 jobs in one day. So think about this situation. Think about the action. So what specifically did your employee do that turned things around? So did they stay with a customer? Did they reschedule something? Did they fill in for a sick employee? What's the tangible action that you could be thanking them for? What's the impact? So what was the difference that they made by doing what they did? Was it saving a customer relationship? Was it developing a faster process? Was it helping to avert a crisis? What was the impact on the workforce and how was that important? And then link it back to the purpose of the team or the organization. So in other words, how did what they do contribute to what you stand for? And this is it's a continuous cycle. So each time you thank someone in this specific way, using this situation, action, impact, and link, you are continuing to reinforce your team's mission, goals, what you stand for as an agency, what is important to you. And so you continue to just perpetually and gain momentum with your recognition program. So go beyond the thank you. Don't just say thank you. That's simple. We say thank you to the barista. We say thank you for people holding the door. Say thank you for holding the door, or thank you for being so lovely today, or thank you for, you know, getting something done for me so quickly. I really appreciate it. So go one step further with your thank yous.
You have to go into a different spot, because if you haven't chosen a beneficiary prior,
I thought that was related to this. I was like, okay. I don't know if everyone saw, but Deb put in the chat that someone told her about snackmagic.com, which allows employees to choose gifts, snacks to be mailed to their homes from different options on the site. So if you have a remote workforce, you're okay, Brenda. If you have a remote workforce, you know, that's a nice way that you can send them something in appreciation. Have you used that before, Deb, or have you just heard about it?
I have not used it yet, but I've heard about it, and they have like different types of snacks and drinks, and then they have some sort of like tchotchkes and prophecy products too. So you basically would get a gift card for each of your employees, and they can go on and choose what they want, and it gets mailed to them.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can tie it to outcomes too. So you can tie recognition to outcomes. You know, it's absolutely not, it's a wonderful thing to be able to just because recognize your employees, or just because send them something, but you can also tie your recognition program to specific outcomes that you want as an organization. And that might kind of lessen the financial burden is if there's a positive outcome for what they're doing. But there's lots of platforms like that where you can send an employee a gift to their house, or I've even heard of companies that have done like you know, they'll send you a meal to your house. You know, there's lots of things that you can do. So again, we're craving more connection. You know, and I think I was telling Kelly earlier, I have to deliver another training today about managing virtually in the workplace. And when you have a workforce that maybe is disjointed or is, you know, mostly remote, you have to be more intentional about how you spend your time and how you form those connections and the time that we're putting into employees. So I'm a big fan of one-to-ones. Scheduling time on someone's calendar where you just catch up. You see how they're doing, you see what they need, you see, you know, how their experience has been. And this is actually a great tool with new hires. A week in or 2 weeks in, have a one-to-one with them and see how their experience has been. And this is something human resources can do. You do not need your managers to do it, depending on how large your organization is. But you know, you can absolutely schedule one-to-ones and establish that connection and normalize it. So I think, you know, there's a ton of memes that float around on the internet about human resources and how mean we are and how, you know, nobody likes human resources. But when we normalize these one-on-one meetings, I think that will help our reputation as well a bit, you know, but normalize these connection points. It sends the message that connection is critical and essential and important to you as an organization. And then I like this idea of a walk and talk, especially as the weather gets nicer. Make time, schedule time with your employees to walk and talk, catch up, get some exercise, get some fresh air, and loosen up a little bit. And you'll probably learn something about, you know, your employees or the workforce that maybe you didn't know before, because walk and talks are a bit more casual and a bit more relaxed than a traditional one-to-one meeting. Does anyone do kind of intentional one-to-ones in their organization, or walk and talks, or any type of similar connection points or connection meetings?
I feel like at Kafka, Deb Deb, not to put you on the spot, but I feel like you do kind of just have catch ups with us. We have our regular staff meetings, but we'll have just like a check-in where we just kind of chat and what are you up to this weekend? And it's not, super long, but it's just informal. Kind of like back and forth, just catching up like you would if we saw each other in person. So I feel like we do that at our office
Good.
for sure. Yeah.
Good. Awesome.
We are definitely due for another one of those.
So
I will say that on the walk and talk, I did have a supervisor once who was recommending that we do our one-on-ones as a walk and talk. And for me personally, that doesn't work because I like to take notes and I like to refer to notes, and like I just can't do that. I can't remember enough when I'm don't have my notebook in front of me, but I know for a lot of people that does work. And if it's just an informal catch up, then that's also different than a one-on-one meeting where you're like reviewing goals and progress and so forth.
Yeah, I know, like when I try to schedule meetings with employees just to kind of check in, I'll have an employee that's on an FMLA leave or I know is going through something, and I'll want to have a meeting with them. And a lot of times I'll get the, what did I do? What did I do again? Or am I in trouble? And so when we normalize, these meetings and the connection again, that makes you a much more approachable human resources professional, and that reminds your staff that like these types of connections are important and those open lines of communication are important. So something that we're able to do now a little bit more than we were before is to incorporate family into our recognition programs. So with so many of us continuing to work from home, our home life has kind of become our work life. So you will see your employees and, the art they have on their wall, or maybe their dog barks in the background, or, their kid bursts in during a meeting. We're seeing so much more of our employees than we used to, and some of it we don't want to know, I'm sure. But in a way, it's nice to be able to see what our employees might be like outside of the workplace. And so we can incorporate recognizing their families or bringing a personal touch to the recognition in our program. So, let's say your workforce is a lot of young mothers. Maybe each time you send them, a company branded onesie, or that you're having a Zoom meeting with your employee and their dog barks, send them, a box of dog treats. Like these little ways that you can say, I see you, I hear you, I understand you. You are more than just an employee, you're a human being. You have, these things going on at home, or I know this about you. That all sends a message to your employee that they're appreciated, that their employer values them more than just what they contribute to the workplace. And I also think it's important to recognize that everyone has, for the most part, has had to make a sacrifice during this pandemic, juggling new challenges, trying to give your team members the physical and mental space to do their work. So this pandemic has affected everyone, not just your employees. So if you can find kind of unique ways to incorporate and show appreciation for your employees' family members, or personalize your recognition or appreciation for them, that makes it that more impactful and that much more special. So I'll leave you with this. I have one more survey kind of question at the end, but this was a post-COVID recovery study.
Is there any subtitles you want me to put in that you're gonna?
So Deloitte, another big consulting firm that does surveys, they did like a study on workforce strategies for post COVID-19, and really it's an opportunity for us to reboot, to reassess. We do not have to continue to do things in the way that we used to do them. And coming out of a pandemic is actually a perfect time to change our processes and to think differently. And so this came from their study on how HR and people operations can kind of reboot their priorities. Because again, now's the perfect time. So obviously it's a good time to reflect on what has worked, what has been learned, what you missed, what your employees were missing, and bring in different perspectives and voices. Maybe it's time that you start a committee, an employee recognition committee, where you get other perspectives and other voices about what your workforce needs, other than just your leadership telling you what they think their employees need. Recommit to workforce well-being and purpose through physical, psychological, and financial concerns. And this is at home and in the workplace as well. I have a medical office client that we do hematology and oncology care. So their jobs were already really hard. They were dealing with cancer patients. And then we had a pandemic and it became that much harder. And so for us right now, there's a big push to ensure that our employees are handling the stress of work really well. And we're trying to come up with some new ways and some new ideas on how to relieve some of that stress and really focus on their psychological well-being. Re-engage and redeploy the workforce to maximize their contribution and potential for a rapidly evolving priority as an organization. Rework and rethink your workforces and your workplaces. So again, it's, I think Kelly and I were talking a little bit beforehand, like it's not everyone is going to go back to a traditional office. Not a lot of workplaces will look the same. So you can use your experience with the COVID-19 pandemic to think a bit more strategically about what makes sense for us as an organization. Does it make sense that we have everybody remote, or should we, bring people back? What makes the most sense for business operations? And again, reboot your HR and people operation priorities, realign your HR functions with the most pressing business needs and workforce priorities so that you as HR can pivot a little bit better if we have another situation like this. I mean, HR, we always have crises, but this is kind of a bigger crisis than normal. So, realign your function and get strategic in terms of your recognition program. So I want to hear from you guys. It's another poll everywhere. So again, if you go to pollev.com/Dana D000, or you can text Dana D000 to 22333. But what new things have you incorporated into your recognition programs post COVID? So let us know if you've done anything different, or have you focused more on mental health during the pandemic? Have you, brought in guest speakers about mental health? So again, it's pollev.com/Dana D000. Again, it is anonymous, so you can feel free to speak freely. Grief and loss webinar, that's fantastic. Yeah, we had a client, or we had a licensed clinical social worker come in and do a 2-hour training with our leadership on how they can best support employees when there's grief or loss. And that was very well received. Improve upon it. Awesome. And I think surveying your employees is going to be a big way, an important way to really understand, what do they need? Um, because you may think you know what they need, but we all know that our employees are motivated by different things, and what's important to one employee is not going to be the same thing that that is important to everybody. Sending appreciation gifts, edible arrangements, plants, etc. Yeah. I I think sometimes in HR we can get just too kind of standardized, where we want something quick and easy and cookie cutter. But even things like, let's say you have an employee that has a loss, sending them a bouquet of their favorite flowers versus just a sympathy arrangement, that's a special way to acknowledge them. I know you, I see you. So I had an employee whose father passed away, and they really enjoyed fishing together. And so we sent an arrangement that was like fish themed. Um, so those are all little ways that you can really make it personal. And I think too, in human resources, like, you have managers who are constantly going, constantly moving, pushing the needle forward. And so sometimes it's on us to kind of push pause and say, let's think about how we can recognize this employee, and what's important to that employee, or how can we do something nice to them. Brenda shared in the chat, we did a virtual walk across the world with Virgin Pulse, virtual cooking classes and picnic blankets to eat outside now that it's getting nice. That's really cool. How was that received, Brenda? Did your employees enjoy that? Yeah, good. Yeah, I know of another, there's a marketing company here in Norwich. They do yoga classes for their employees. It's all virtual, but it's a way that they're able to connect still, bring some wellness into the workplace, and kind of give employees something nice to do aside from work. So these are, all great examples, all great things. And I appreciate the feedback and the thoughts and the contributions, but I'll open it up to see if there's any questions or kind of final thoughts.
Yeah, and feel free to unmute yourself, or if you can't, just raise your hand and I can unmute you. Especially for those of you that said you've done some of these things and they've been successful. I mean, if you have any other thoughts you want to share, or just anecdotal information, I think that would be great.
Okay, one of the things that we did organizational wide is in the beginning of the year, just everybody was kind of getting that burnout of being at home. Like we're rotating back into the office now. Some people are back in the office. But we just went and did something simplistic and got a card, which is laying here somewhere on my desk, with a Walmart $20 gift card in it, and just said, look, we appreciate you. It's a new year. It's a new challenges. Let's let 2020 in the past and 2021 moving forward. So it was across the organization. It was handed out, and it was signed by each department head and handed out personally, instead of just thrown in mailboxes, so that everybody got an opportunity to see each other. Even though we had to stay social distance. And then my boss sent me this little basket, which is hard to see, but it's full of dog things, because I'm a dog person. So it's got a dog mug in there, and some snacks for both of us. So
see that, awesome. And that's awesome, because it's personalized to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's very special. If you go on Pinterest, you can find so many cute little recognition ideas, and they don't have to be expensive. And I think you'll find too, if you spend a couple $100s to put together little, baskets for your employees, the reward and the return on that action is tenfold, because you're getting people to feel committed to the organization. By showing appreciation, you're increasing your productivity, kind of all those things that we talked about at the very beginning. So it might seem like it's a big expense, or it could be a big expense, but the ROI on it could be huge. Any other questions? So you guys can get credit for this training, for participating in this training. I will leave this up on the screen, but you can get 1 professional development credit for your SHARM certification, and then that is the code for the actual PDC. And I'll make sure we'll email this presentation out so that you guys can, if you don't write it down, you can take advantage of it.
Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you guys so much.
Rhonda or Deb, anything that you want to say before we jump off? We appreciate everyone's participation today and lots of good ideas, but I just want to give Rhonda and Deb a chance.
Yeah, no, thank you. I would just echo what Kelly said. Lots of good ideas, and I'm glad that we had good participation across the network. So you can all bring this back to your agencies, and hopefully some of these ideas will be implemented, and you can improve employee engagement and satisfaction as well.
I could just quickly also say that if you guys have any thoughts or ideas about future topics for sessions, if you could share those with Kelly and the TAFCA team, because we definitely want to make sure that the content that we're bringing you is things that's helpful and that's going to help within your individual organizations and the network as a whole. So thank you for that as well.
All right, great.
Thank you guys
Thanks,
so
everyone.
much.
Have a great day. And that's Dana's contact info. And like I said in the chat, this is recorded. We'll send this out with the PowerPoint and an evaluation as well.
I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye guys, have a good
everyone.
day.
Take care. Bye-bye.